Everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So in this one here, I wanted to break down the trailer for episode 6, or I guess the finale of the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2. So we're already here, we're at the finale, and yeah, there's a lot to talk about here because they really seem to be setting up a lot of future stuff for the Walking Dead. But before I can talk about that, obviously I do have to warn you for spoilers for episode 5 of the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2, and also make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. But we did learn at the end of episode 5 that the plane isn't going to be able to have 4 people on board, and so yeah, I guess 3 people is pretty much the limit. I'm not entirely sure as to why. I'm sure that early on in the finale they're probably going to talk about that, because there's some shots here in the trailer where it seems like they're trying to figure some stuff out, like, well, what if we just like did this or that? Like, is there any way that we can all go? And so it is funny, I will say, that this was sort of not a question the whole season. Like, to me, it's one of those things where I think Carol probably should have thought of this a little bit more, but it kind of makes sense, I guess, in some way. Like, if you think about it, like, Carol thought that she was just going to get Daryl. So she probably thought, like, yeah, it would just be 3 people. And then I think for, you know, Ash, like, Ash thought that it was probably just going to be Sophia. And so it makes sense that in terms of them not communicating all of this properly, that, yeah, something like this would happen. And then obviously for Daryl, like, he thought that Laurent would just, like, go back on the plane, but Daryl never really knew, you know, like, how the plane would work overall. Like, would it be able to, you know, have everybody like on the plane? So I think that it made sense that as soon as they got to this point here where they can leave, that this would come up like this, like, yeah, well, we all can't fit on the plane. Like, there's no way the plane's going to be able to make it to America, you know, with all of us. And so it's kind of hilarious that this would just come up out of nowhere, but it is something that I think makes sense overall for the story. And it is interesting because I do think I know how this is going to end. I do think that Ash and Laurent are going to leave, because we do see in the trailer here that Ash and Laurent are actually in the plane and they're actually like driving down the runway here, because there's a lot of shots here. We actually see somebody on a motorcycle chasing them, so I imagine that that is Pouvoir, or not Pouvoir, but the Nest, or I guess, yeah, like, it is the Nest at this point, because Pouvoir is basically done. There is nothing left of Pouvoir at this point, and so it is the Nest going after them, and I imagine they are going to get away, because again, I mentioned this in my review or my breakdown of the episode, like, I just don't see them dying here. Like, if the plane is actually going down the road here, and you can actually see it in this shot, like, the plane is driving here and is getting ready to, like, you know, take off. And so I think that would be absolutely insane if something happened here. Like, I think that it makes sense that they're probably going to survive, because there's a lot that I think is going to happen in this episode that Laurent is not going to be a part of. Like, we see so many shots here of Daryl and Carol in this, I don't know what it is, like a tunnel or something, but there's bioluminescent walkers everywhere, and it actually looks like Carol is starting to, you know, see Sophia around and whatnot. So it's going to be a really emotional episode, and like, that seems so separate from all that Laurent and Ash stuff, and because we don't see Ash or Laurent here at all, I think probably in the first half of the episode, that's likely what's going to happen, is that Ash and Laurent will just get away, and that will sort of be it. Like, maybe something happens at the very end of the episode, but because they're literally there at the garage with the plane, I think that it makes sense that they're probably just going to get away, and then Daryl and Carol are going to leave and try to find some other way to get back home. And then I think at some point here, we're probably going to learn something, you know, where it's like, well, if you go to Spain, then you could probably get a plane or like a boat or something that will actually take you across to America. So that's probably going to be what happens overall in the finale, because the trailer starts off with, we see Anne driving her vehicle, and it looks like Pouvoir, or the Nest, actually sort of surrounds her. And then so she gets out of the vehicle here, and then she talks with, I believe her name is Jacinta. And so she's asking about Laurent, which I feel like, you know, it makes sense as to what's going to happen here. Like, she's going to have to say overall, like, this is where Laurent is or whatever. And then we see a bunch of shots here of Daryl and Carol talking about, you know, what's going on, and Daryl sort of says, well, you know, like, I'll stay here, and Carol says something about, well, she'll stay here too as well, or something, and I imagine there's going to be some arguing or whatever. But I do think that's probably going to be the decision that they make here, is that Daryl and Carol are going to stay. They'll find a way to get back. Like, it might be, you know, it might take a bit, but they'll find another way. And so I think that Ash, obviously, he's the pilot, like, he's going to have to go. And so I think he's going to take Laurent. As we see in the trailer, they're actually like driving. And then we see some shots here of Pouvoir. And again, because of the lighting, like, that's one of the things in terms of me giving predictions. Like, sometimes I'm wrong for sure. Not sometimes, a lot of times I'm wrong. But like, you know, in terms of the lighting in the scene here, I think it's related, because it looks very similar to when you see Daryl and Cadron shooting at these vehicles here. And there's actually a shot here where you see I guess Jacinta in this vehicle. So like, I think it makes sense. Like, they know where the plane is, and also mentioned in episode 5 that she knows where the plane is and whatnot. Like, she was sort of talking about it. So I think that she knows overall where they're going. And so we see some shots here where we do see Falou here as well, actually, and Kudrone. So at some point, they're obviously going to make it here, and they come up with some plan to leave. And then I think that, yeah, Daryl and Carol, Falou, and Kudrone, they're going to deal with the rest of the nest. And then I don't know where that story ends. They're probably going to follow them. Like, the way I see it is, if Laurent is gone, and like, I can't even really picture what that would look like if Laurent actually left and, you know, the plane leaves and he's safe now, like, what's the nest going to do? They're going to be very upset. And so I think they're going to try and get Daryl and Carol. And if they're leaving, like, I think they'll chase them down. So I think that's why, you know, they're after them, you know, later on in the trailer here. We'll get to that. We do see Daryl with his crossbow. I thought this was going to happen in episode 5. Like, it's actually kind of weird that it never happened, because the crossbow is there, like, in the plane, I'm assuming. Like, it's somewhere there. Carol was there a lot. Like, you would think that Carol would mention something like that. Like, oh, Daryl, I brought your crossbow, right? Like, something. But, like, no mention of it. It's probably going to happen very early on in the finale. Like, maybe you want to save it for the finale because it's a bigger reveal. I don't know. But yeah, it's still very cool to actually see happen here. But I do think that a lot of this is happening earlier on. And once all of this setup happens here, like, the nest finds out where they are, they go and attack them. They're basically going to leave at this point here. And then we have this shot here of the nest actually, like, they're all looking for Daryl and Carol. And again, this is all very unrelated to what's happening earlier on. So I think this is like the second half of the episode as they're going towards like the bioluminescent walkers and whatnot. So gonna be really interesting. There's actually a really quick shot here that I do want to talk about where we do see Daryl and Laurent here, and it looks like Daryl is saying goodbye. I think Laurent is really concerned and is like, well, you know, I can't leave here without you. But I think Daryl's gonna reassure him that, like, I'll find you. Like, I will find you. And so I'm going to do some videos on this. I think I might do a video later on talking about this storyline, because Laurent and Ash, like, if it actually does happen, I'm really assuming a lot here, but if Ash does go to America with Laurent, like, they're going to go to the Commonwealth. And I'm going to be really interested in hearing some of the dialogue here, because I'm assuming they're going to have to give them like directions. Like, all right, Carol will say, like, once you get to America, go to this place here, and this is where the Commonwealth is going to be. Ask for this person or this person, and that's where Laurent is going to go, right? Like, they'll have to make some mentions of that. And so I assume that that's going to be the plan overall. And so, like, looking forward, you know, in terms of the timeline, like, by the time Laurent gets there, like, as of right now, Rick and Michonne are already back, right? So the way I look at it, like, Laurent is going to get back there. Rick and Michonne are going to learn that Daryl and Carol are in France from Laurent, because Laurent's going to go there, probably talk with, like, Judith and everyone, because Judith is going to hear about the whole situation, obviously, because that's where Daryl is. Like, Ash is going to probably tell everybody. And again, they're all going to find out. Like, Rick and Michonne will find out about Daryl and Carol. Like, it just makes sense. Like, that is where the story is going. If it didn't happen like that, like, what else would happen? Like, it just makes sense. Like, that's what is happening right now, right? Like, they're going to find out what happened to Daryl and Carol. So I wonder if that is set up for the future for like season 3 and 4. And yeah, again, I'll talk about that later on, but it is kind of interesting, because I do think that Laurent at some point is going to come back into the story here. I mean, it is kind of insane to think, though, like, if he is gone, like, is that it for the character? Is he not going to be back in season 3 or 4? Like, I wonder if at some point, like, they're going to land somewhere and then eventually come back. I don't know if that makes too much sense. I think if anything, Laurent would come back with the CRM or something like that. I think that makes the most sense in terms of the story and, like, helping out Daryl and Carol, right? But we do see Daryl and Carol actually end up in this tunnel here where there's like bioluminescent walkers, and like, I'm not expecting any sort of other story in terms of, you know, the super walkers and any sort of origin reveals and all of that. But what I will say is that it seems like the super walkers are different than the walker that we saw in the post-credit scene. I know that they seem kind of similar, but it seems like they may have changed the story up a little bit here, because Gimple was talking about, you know, certain aspects of the story adding to the mythology here in the last couple of episodes here. And Janae did talk about, you know, they created the monsters. And so I'm assuming that France created the walker virus, it seems like. And in this scene here where we're seeing the bioluminescent walkers, there's probably some backstory here. There's probably some connection to a lot of that, but I don't know if it's going to be a big part of the episode story overall. They're probably just going to be walking through certain areas. There might be like a foreshadowing to this, or stuff where we're going to have to really analyze every single scene and be like, what does this mean? What does this mean, kind of thing, right? Because it'll be nothing that's like there at all. It's going to be very, very just like in the background kind of thing. But yeah, we do see a shot here of Carol, and she actually sees Sophia here, which is crazy. And so I think that is going to be something that does actually happen towards the end of the episode here. Like, Carol seems to be upset here over, I guess, seeing Sophia and just some of the stuff that she's been going through. Daryl's here, Daryl's here with her. And so I don't know where this is going to go, but I imagine that this is probably going to be very similar to the Cherokee Rose scene in season 2. That's probably what they're trying to do here, right? So I'm curious on where this ends. Like, based off of, the trailer here, I really do think that it's all going to end on a cliffhanger of sorts. Like, in a way, they sort of resolve Laurent's storyline, but like, I'm sure he'll be back in the future. Same with Ash. Like, they're probably going to leave. I don't think they're going to die. I don't know what happens to Cadron and Falou. I hope they don't die. Like, they're obviously there. Maybe they die. The Nest, I don't know if they're all taken out here, like in this place with the bioluminescent walkers. It's possible, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But it seems like at the very end, like these last shots here of Daryl and Carol, I feel like this is towards the end of the episode, and that's probably going to be how the episode ends, to be honest, is Daryl and Carol are just on their way to Spain, and maybe they know where they're going overall, or maybe they're just trying to get away. But I think it's going to be a cliffhanger of sorts. And then for season 3, I mean, honestly, for season 3, I do want to do some videos on season 3 because there's some really exciting stuff. Like, it actually seems like they're going to be in a desert and all of that. So the story is going to be going in a really crazy place here, and it does feel like we're finally getting the show that I guess we were always going to get, which is with Daryl and Carol, which honestly is really great. I like having the characters together. I think that a lot of this season, the issues that I have are more that, they had to get Carol to France, and that was just really frustrating, I think, the whole time, because it was taking up so much of the scenes, and like, it made sense. Like, you wanted to explain it all, but again, because of Povar's story ending so fast and how they handled everything, I think that it just took up way too much of the screen time. But again, I understand why they wanted to do everything, but that's why I always say this needed to be 8 to 10 episodes. If it was 8 to 10 episodes, this would have all been fixed. A lot more time would have been spent on telling this story or that story properly, and I think that really, maybe there would still be complaints, fine, but I think that really was the issue overall. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.